Hi, everybody. This is Leslie Bandel, and I specialize in eating disorder treatment. And today, our presentation is going to look at the other pieces of the what causes or influences eating disorders, specifically the social aspects and also the psychological aspects. So, what are eating disorders? Conditions defined by abnormal eating habits and other compensatory behaviors. And by that I mean maybe they don't diet, maybe they exercise though to get rid of calories that they've eaten. It's basically abnormal. And included in this definition now is ARFID, which is avoidant restrictive eating disorder. And this used to be childhood something, but they renamed it ARFID and put it under eating disorders because it's so prevalent and needed its own category so that more research could be done on it. Basically, that's your picky eater. Your picky eater gone bad, basically. Picky to the point where they're really malnourished and not thriving. All right. Eating disorder causes. So here in a pictorial representation, I'm showing you that the genetic biological combined with social pressures of our culture and certain psychological issues combined together for the perfect storm, creating the eating disorder in the middle. So what are some of the things that almost always show up along with the diagnosis of anorexia and bulimia? Well, in the case of anorexia, obsessive compulsive disorder is very often comorbid, and it fits right in with anorexia's need to control things. With the obsessive compulsive disorder, everything they want, everything predictable, everything in its place, and only then can they relax. Otherwise, they're suffering from a tremendous amount of anxiety and feeling the pain of uncertainty. The other is social phobia, so really terrified of going outside. General anxiety disorder, that's always present. I actually have not met someone who didn't have that combined with it. Excuse me. I suppose they exist though. And that's true for bulimia as well. Also major anxiety. Major depression shows up in anorexia and bulimia. Primarily bulimia, but it can be both. In bulimia, there's more of a tendency towards mood disorders and also compensating with substance disorders. So even though it may seem obvious what the social pressures are and what the cultural pressures are, I'm going to run through a few of those just to give you an idea. So in our culture, it is absolutely taught that our worth is measured by our waistline. Our value in our culture is how good we can hide emotions and sensitivity. There is tremendous pressure to be successful, and you only have value if you're successful. And it creates all these pressures and misguided direction on how to survive in our culture. So here's some statistics. 90% of all women, 75% of men are dissatisfied with their body. Probably no surprise there. 5 out of 10 people have either suffered from an eating disorder or know someone who's suffered from it. Over 50% of teenage girls and 33% of boys are really using unhealthy weight control. They don't really know how to, improve their body, and so they just stop eating. 51% of all first through third graders want to be thinner. Average American woman, 5'4", 144 pounds. Average model, 5'9", 100 pounds. Technically anorexic, they qualify that. 95% of all dieters regain it in 1 to 5 years. And this really speaks to why the researchers decided to ask the question, why is it that a small percentage of people do not gain their weight back? Not only do they not gain their weight back, they lose more weight and lose weight all the way until they're dead. And that's what guided the researchers on their journey to start to look at the neurobiological underpinnings. And then the big wow, the weight loss industry takes in over $80 billion per year. Yeah, there's no mystery. We're all being sort of brainwashed into being slightly dissatisfied with our bodies so that we will buy things to make us feel better. This is true often of teenagers with eating disorders, and I think also with adults, though I treat teenagers, is this myth that if they just lost some weight, all their problems would be solved. And many experience it that way because if they have low self-esteem, low self-confidence, that instantly goes away when they start to lose weight. And that's very gratifying. And it appears and it feels like all their problems have gone away. They're confident. They walk into a room feeling proud and certain no one is judging them. So Barbie is not an actual body type. You can't find it in any culture. Average woman, 5'4", 144 pounds, 5 pounds. And Barbie, the truth is that her measurements and her height are not possible. And so that, along with other things like Monster High dolls, they're just filling the kids' heads with skeletal being the preferable. We also see, we look at the fact that airbrushing is distorting everything around us. If you notice here, George Clooney looks at least 20 years younger. They don't put the photo on the left out there. They put the photo on the right, creating a lot of ageism. And then the gal on the right, if you look at her, she almost looks plastic. It's very, very strange what they did with her complexion. She does look like a Barbie doll. They also, with airbrushing, are able to get rid of anything. They can change anything. They can lengthen the neck. They can make the waist smaller, manipulate the thighs. And you can see the differences here in this photo. And here's my big joke. Even Barbie is airbrushed. All right. I'm going to pause for now. I think I can do it from here. But I want to show you something from the Dove campaign.
Why are people snagging this $89 portable AC? I recently discovered how to refrigerate any room in my house in under 5 minutes without using my home's costly AC.
All right, I'm not going to be able to show that. You've all enjoyed a nice little commercial on air conditioning. But I think the point is this shows in very 30 seconds how they airbrush the models, looking not even remotely like the person they started with. And this is done by the Dove campaign. Dove soap has really been a champion and leader in the industry and worked very hard to help debunk the idea that these people that are in the media or on paper or on billboards are even remotely as perfect as they look. And they've done quite a great job at it. I encourage you to watch them. You just Google Dove campaign. All right. So, what are the psychological effects of an eating disorder? Well, first of all, due in part to some of the neurobiological issues, but there's sort of a visual distortion with a lot of these people, is they can be next to death, thin, and look in the mirror and still see fat. So pretty much the way they think of the psychological piece of the eating disorder at this point is that it's being used as a coping mechanism. And so the eating disorders are not really about food, although it can look like that. They're more about gaining control over themselves and their feelings. And they all are extremely sensitive and highly anxious. And so an eating disorder is like a wonderful coping mechanism. And it works really well, just like drugs and alcohol work really well. The nervous system loves what works well and what works fast, and eating disorders work well and work fast, solving many problems. They feel more esteemed. They feel they've mastered something. They have more control, self-control than other people. It's a sense of pride. Also, all that sensitivity just becomes numb, and they aren't bothered as much. So, underpinning all this is usually a feeling of shame in some shape or form. Where does shame come from? Maybe you were seen as different, or you felt different when you were growing up. Could be trauma or neglect. The media is constantly shaming you and telling you you need to buy these products in order to be up to snuff. Maybe you were bullied or rejected. Divorced parents might cause that, where they start to think it's their fault. All these things add up to an underlying feeling that they're not enough, they're really not perfect, which our culture adores. They're not special or unique. They're not admirable. There's no value. They're ugly, fat, failure, stupid. And these are the real needs that underlie an eating disorder. Someone who has an eating disorder will tell you that they need to be thin. That's what their need is. But as you dig deeper, you see that the true needs are a lot more complicated. These kind of needs kind of add up to really low self-esteem and consequentially low confidence. So decisions are made by folks who have this horrible low self-esteem, and they have anxiety, and they're sensitive, and they think to themselves, well, I can't change that I'm worthless, but I can look and act like I'm worthy. And so all of us put a mask on in order to go out into the world. We hide a certain amount of ourselves, but people with eating disorders are really hiding a rotting inner world from the rest of the world. They do not want to reveal it ever. They feel that to reveal naturally who they are would be to reveal that they're weak and out of control. And everybody knows that you can't respect someone weak and out of control. And so they must hide it. So these are the kind of decisions they make unconsciously. It's usually not conscious. That they're going to kind of become invulnerable, that they're like the perfect specimen. They don't get angry. They don't get sad. They are able to reject others, or, just be invincible, kind of. They decide to improve their image by becoming thinner and showing that they have much more control. they're very much people pleasers. And so they kind of do whatever you want. They never push it. They never want to make any waves. And of course, the result is that they're very passive or passive aggressive, and they have a very hard time really advocating for any of their needs to get met. They really lose their way when they make these decisions. And so the real truth is, like drugs and alcohol, this is just not a sustainable formula, because all that sensitivity and hiding it behind a mask creates this really big emotional buildup. And they're so terrified that they're going to just blow it in public that they become more isolated. They keep themselves in their room. It's the only place they can be themselves and really let down and be quote unquote imperfect. Never does their emotional issues get taken care of. They never learn how to regulate. And they just have to be avoidant of almost everything. They stop hanging out with friends, family, anything that's going to create a feeling, because like the straw that broke the camel's back, anything could cause them in their mind to just lose control, and that's unacceptable. So right about this point is when sort of an eating disorder might come in and help save the day. So I have Darth eating disorder. But basically, it's that critical part of your brain that's very rigid and very judgmental. It says, listen, if you follow a couple simple rules, I can make you feel better. Now, if you want to look here, the rules is, these are some of the rules I've run across. Some of them are really different, like rubbing mayonnaise on their arms so people won't notice they're not eating the mayonnaise. But what ends up happening is they start to get caught into this web of these rules, because the rules, the expectations don't get looser on these rules. It just gets tighter and tighter and tighter and more expectation. So they might start out saying, oh, I'm going to lose some weight. I'll just skip breakfast this morning. And when they see how easy that was, it's like a tattooed rule in their brain now that they can't eat any breakfast. And to eat breakfast would invite a lot of negative feedback from their eating disorders. And then it turns into, well, that was pretty easy. Let me try lunch. And sure enough, that goes really well. And as soon as something goes well, that means that's what you have to do now and forever. So now, no breakfast, no lunch, can only eat dinner. Well, it doesn't take long for them to get really, really hungry. And so they might reach out and just shove a bunch of crackers in their mouth, or even binge. And the feeling of shame and guilt is so profound at this point that they make a promise to this eating disorder. They say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'll make up for this. Tomorrow I won't eat anything. And that'll make up for the calories I just ate, and I'll get back under control. Well, the promise is that they're going to be thinner, that they're going to feel good about themselves, they're going to feel better. People are going to appear to like them more, they're going to have more friends, they're going to be seen as strong and admirable. I mean, how could you have such willpower, right? And they don't have any feelings. You know, that's one of the greatest gifts of it, is that all that sensitivity and emotionality kind of numbs over. And so they can plow through the world without thinking about others' needs or even their own needs. But the result is, again, it's not sustainable. And instead of gaining more control, they end up losing more control, because now they're under control of the eating disorder. Like, is it really control if you can't even eat a chocolate chip cookie? No, they're so under control. And their feelings and their true needs just end up getting festering, and they become more and more secretive and more depressed, more and more isolated, more anxiety, depression. None of the feelings have been resolved. And eventually they fall down. So I like to call this the perfect storm, and I'm using a Venus flytrap to show this to you. So if you look at the perfect storm, the temperament, the psychological temperament, is across the board, they're all anxious, competitive, very rigid, black and white kind of thinking. They're harm avoidant, any kind of feeling too much, or they're going to avoid any kind of confrontation, that kind of thing. They're impulsive. There's not much room between when they have the thought to restrict and actually doing the behavior. And they take being perfectionistic very, very seriously. You combine that with the social ideals, which we've kind of gone through, of being the best, being the prettiest, being healthy, eat kale now, not Twinkies. The concept that thin is always better. Success, you can only be of value if you have been successful. These pressures are all sitting there waiting. And what are they waiting for? They're waiting for the diet. Because the diet, as soon as they start to restrict all the genetic underpinnings that are present in people who get eating disorders, suddenly wake up. And if you never dieted, it would never wake up. But everybody ends up dieting at some point, and then they become trapped. So diet is like the fly. And they get trapped in the Venus flytrap. They start to devour themselves. They get trapped in this world of compulsive thinking, and they ruminate, and they're obsessing about what did they eat, what are they going to eat, what are the calories, and they absolutely they can't get out. They're totally entrapped by the behaviors and by the thoughts. Oops. All right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Take care and good luck. And I will talk to you later.